Hey everyone, and happy holidays. I'm Jennifer K. Hill, author of 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times, and so happy to be here with everybody on the Pyramid Meditation channel. It's been such a privilege and an honor to get to do collaborations with the Pyramid Spiritual Society movement. So huge thanks to Pari and to Patriji and to all of the people who go into putting on these events. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I wanted to speak today when I was invited to talk about what spiritual topic could I share with you that might make a difference or enhance your lives. I really reflected, and one of the first things that I do, part of my daily practice, which is why I wrote the book, 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times, is to share tools and practices from all of the teachers that I've been fortunate enough to study with over the years. So in the meditation that I was doing this morning, I always like to ask Source, and I say universe. By the way, this is a great tool that one of my teachers, David Guillaume, taught me, is I say, universe, what would you like me to speak on today? What would provide the greatest value for everybody out there who's tuning in? And the message I got was to hone in on 3 topics. 1, soul talking. 2, gratitude. And 3, inner child work. All 3 of these are touched on in book 1 of 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times. Although if you're curious about any of the other tools, you can definitely go to 101spiritualtools.com. And I've actually included in the blog post there a list of all the resources at the back of the book, including some of my favorite meditations and resources to some of the tools we're going to be talking about today. So as an underlying foundation for anything we do, I personally love meditation because it helps me to enhance these other practices that we're going to talk about today. When I was fortunate enough to get to interview Pari and Patriji for respective interviews on the Coalition for Global Unity that I host on Mondays at noon on Awake TV, one of the things that I found out is I had actually never experimented with meditating under a pyramid. I had heard about the concept of it years ago, and from doing the 2 meditations with each of them, I really found how quickly it enhanced and deepened my meditation practice. So one thing I would like to invite everybody to do before we get into today's teaching is to share a combination of using some of the Pyramid Spiritual Society's movement techniques, as well as some heart math techniques, and for each of us just to go within for about 3 to 5 minutes before we get into today's topic, because I find that that just allows us to be more ourselves. And I personally love to do this technique before any of the television or radio interviews that I do myself with the guests that I work with, because I find it really helps to unite and to bring us all into coherence. So I invite everybody to place your right hand on your heart. And if it feels comfortable for you, you can shut your eyes or you can leave them open, whatever feels comfortable for you. If you leave your eyes open, allow them to just softly gaze ahead of you. And start to feel your breath as it goes in and it gets released out lovingly. Now I want you to imagine a beautiful crystalline pyramid. Imagine it right above your head. You can imagine it being iridescent or green or red or purple or any color that really resonates with you, and just visualize the tip of that pyramid right above your head. Imagine the edges of it, and imagine that pyramid above you is just radiating beautiful light so that your whole being is awashed in beautiful, radiant light. Now, as you envision this pyramid right above your head, I'd like to have you visualize the breath that you're allowing to go in and out. And as you breathe, imagine breathing in through the center of your heart, allowing a deep, conscious, loving breath to fill up your heart. And as your heart fills up with that loving breath, imagine thinking of a regenerative emotion. Maybe it's peace, love, gratitude, joy. Whatever it is, just imagine holding and radiating that energy in your heart as your breath flows in and out from one conscious loving breath to the next. And on your next exhale, imagine slowly, easily, and effortlessly releasing that regenerative emotion out into the world around you. And still visualizing right above your head that radiant pyramid energy that's just strengthening this practice all the more, increasing your capacity for love, increasing your capacity for gratitude, increasing your capacity to receive abundance and all of your hearts and wishes being fulfilled. And on your next inhale, imagine allowing another conscious, deep, loving breath in through the center of your heart. And now imagine as you allow these conscious, loving breaths to flow easily and effortlessly in and out through your heart space. Imagine a person, a place, maybe an animal or a thing that you truly deeply love, and imagine just holding the image of that person, place, thing, animal, whatever it might be. Imagine holding that in your heart space. Imagine that love that you have for that person, place, thing, or animal, and just imagine that love flowing right out of your chest on your next exhale as you breathe out with ease and sending that love out into the world. And now on your next inhale, as you breathe easily and effortlessly right into your heart space, expanding that heart space, visualizing the energy expanding around your heart space as you breathe in and out. Now imagine filling up your heart with your next breath with radiant love, vibrant love. Imagine that love filling up your whole being. Imagine it extending and pulsing outside of your body, outside of the pyramid that is above you, outside of your home or space that you're living in or wherever you're sitting. Imagine pulsing that love beyond the city or town or wherever it is that you might be. Imagine pulsing and sending that love, expanding it out to the country that surrounds you and the people in that country. And on your next inhale, imagine pulsing that love out from your heart, out to the whole world. Imagine using that pyramid energy that is pouring down from above you to enhance this energy and to fuel it as you send this love and pulse this love out around the whole planet. And now as you allow another breath to easily and effortlessly go in and out of your heart, you can visualize coming back now into your country. Back now into your village or city or wherever it is you might be in the world. Now imagine going back into the space right where you're sitting. Now visualize that beautiful iridescent pyramid above you and imagine that pyramid radiating light down through the top of your crown, down through your third eye, through your throat, down through your heart and your solar plexus, down through your sacral area and your root, down through your legs, down through your shins and your feet and your toes, right down into the center of the earth. And as you reach that center of the earth with the light from the pyramid radiating above you and shooting all the way down, imagine that radiant light as though it's a bubble filling up at the center of the earth with all the unconditional love, all of the abundance, all of the peace and joy and happiness you've ever desired. Imagine it just filling up this bubble of light. And now imagine radiating that bubble of light back out from the center of the earth, up through the floor, up through your feet and your toes, through your shins and your legs, up through your root chakra. Visualize the color red. Up through your sacral chakra, visualizing the color orange. Up through your solar plexus, visualizing the color yellow. Up through your heart chakra, visualizing a beautiful spring green as that energy flows up into your throat, and visualizing a beautiful sky blue energy. Up through your third eye, visualizing that beautiful midnight purple. And up through your crown to the original pyramid where it radiated from, that white incandescent light. And imagine taking that pyramid, taking that radiant energy source down through your crown, down through your third eye, down through your throat, and into your heart, and now knowing with perfect certainty that everything that you've ever needed to manifest your wishes, hearts, hopes, and dreams, happiness, joy, and abundance, is always going to be carried with you right there in that pyramid energy in your heart. You gotta love life. I was not planning on doing that as part of today's talk, but one of the topics, actually the 11th tool in the book, and it's such an important cornerstone of all the other spiritual practices that we do, is meditation. And there are so many beautiful, wonderful ways that we can meditate. That's why we created the Coalition for Global Unity on Mondays, to explore all the different varieties of meditation, music, and ways to connect to the deep stillness within us. And so allow yourself just to be here for a moment before we get into today's topics. Maybe wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Notice if you have any energy radiating out around you. You can even visualize that energy and just drawing it down to your Daintian area, just visualizing all that extra energy you have right below the belly button, and just hold that here as we're gathering today. And now in this space, we get the opportunity to explore a couple of my favorite topics and tools that I love to share with people. The first of which is what I like to term soul talking. Now, this might seem like insurmountable task to soul talk. A lot of us can't even hear our own souls, let alone the soul of another human being. So I'm going to share with you some techniques today about how you can learn to tune in deeply to your soul and to the soul of those around you. One of the techniques that I learned in order to do this is a Kabbalistic technique. I'm a huge advocate of Kabbalah. I've been studying for about 8 years, and if any of you out there are interested in learning, I would highly recommend a good little taste of what Kabbalah is about is a podcast every week called The Weekly Energy Boost. It's free to download, and it's facilitated by two of my favorite teachers, David Guillaume and Ellie Sheva. And they really explore a lot of the concepts in much more depth. And one of the concepts that we're going to be talking about today, I'm sure if you put it in the search function of the podcast, you might even be able to find a whole episode that they've done on it, called the proactive formula. So the Kabbalists call this the proactive formula. I call it soul talking, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. So the proactive formula is something that I've long believed. It's a technique that I started using in my personal life about 10 years ago before I even started learning Kabbalah. And that first step in the proactive formula is pause. Pause. It's one of the first spiritual tools I ever learned that integrates in such a beautiful way with all of the other spiritual tools that you might explore in your life. When we pause, there's almost a meditative practice element to the pause. When we pause before we react, when we pause before we speak, when we pause before we engage with another human being or animal or our food, whatever it might be, we're creating this sacred space in which something beautiful can be made manifest. So step one in the proactive formula, which we'll call soul talking, is to pause. Step two is once you've paused and you're about to say something to another person. Now, let's say, you're having an everyday conversation. Maybe it's not something that you're really worried about talking about. You don't have to use a proactive formula, but it can be very powerful in any circumstance. And the Kabbalists particularly recommend using this formula when you're about to have a challenging conversation or a conversation you're just not quite sure how it's going to go. So let's say I'm about to go and speak to my boss because I really want a raise. So sometimes we might get in our head, we might be worried we say the wrong thing. Divine timing is half the battle of anything. I don't even cancel. I don't even want to call it a battle. It's half of the opportunity is timing things the right way and doing things in the right time. So what you want to do is you want to then ask, once you've paused and you're about to engage in a conversation, maybe it's with your boss or your spouse or your child or your friend, and let's use the example of a boss. And you would want to imagine from your heart space to your boss's heart space, asking, are you available to have a conversation with me right now for a promotion? Now, it's really important to understand that you're not saying this verbally yet. Right now, you're still in the pause phase. You've paused, and now you're visualizing and imagining asking this question from your heart to the other person's heart, from your soul to the other person's soul. Now, here's where it gets to be a lot of fun. Tuning in. This is why I wanted to start off with a little bit of meditation. We all have this voice of our soul, the voice of another soul, but often we can't hear it because the megaphone that's in our head is always judging things. So when we pause, it gives us a moment to connect to that still, that quiet voice that exists within each and every one of us, and that still, quiet voice that exists in other people. And when we ask, is this person available to receive it? It might look one of many ways for you. Perhaps for you, it might actually feel like something in your body. You might get like a tugging sensation. I know for me in my heart, I feel when something is a no, it's like somebody's pulling down on my heart. When something is a yes, it's this beautiful fluid opening up of my chest. So know that I also sometimes hear a very quiet yes in my heart, or I might hear a very clear no, or you might hear a very soft whisper that you can barely discern. So sometimes I'll pause a little bit longer and I'll ask the question again from my heart to theirs. So I don't just do it once. I might do it 2 or 3 times in the space of 30 seconds. And 30 seconds may seem like a long time, but it's priceless when you think of the impact in a positive way it can have in your life and the life of others when you take the time to ask, is the person available to receive what I'm about to ask them or what I'm about to share with them? And then if you hear a no, this is probably the most important aspect of this tool. If you hear a no, or if you get a tingly sensation or something in your body, a gut feeling that just says, the timing's not right, wait. Pause. And what you want to do is you want to go back and you want to pause and you want to wait for the right timing to come up. It might be in 10 minutes, it might be in 2 days or 2 weeks, but you want to give yourself the time, space, and the other person until they're ready to receive it. What I do if I get a no is sometimes I'll check in an hour later, and then maybe a day later, and then a few days later, and then a week later, and just kind of see where the person's at. And eventually their soul will likely say yes to you. However, there are some circumstances where people have friction. They might have a lack of affinity or love for one another. Maybe there was a heartbreak or a betrayal. That ties into tool 1 in the book called the Ho'oponopono prayer, where you can say a forgiveness prayer. I'll give it to you right now, actually. It's in the book, and it's something you can find lots of great videos on YouTube on it. But what happens for me, if I get a lot of no's, if I'm getting a lot of pushback and resistance that the person just does not want to talk to me at all, then I actually go backwards and I use the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is this. You say out loud, while visualizing the other person's energy, I apologize. Please forgive me. Thank you for being in my life so that I may love you. I'll say it again. I apologize. Please forgive me. Thank you for being in my life so that I may love you. And this is not something you ever say or you write to the other person. Granted, you can do it if you and your loved ones get in the practice of it. You could absolutely say it to one another. I often will say it out loud while visualizing the person. I might say it while I'm cooking or walking, or, I could be doing any number of things. And I'll say this. And one of the other things I do is I ask the other person's soul, to go back to the soul talking, I ask them each day that I do it for them, how many times would you like me to say this prayer for you today? And with people where there's a space between us, where there's that lack of love or lack of connection, sometimes when I say this, I might hear a message that I need to say it 20 or 30 times for a person. Other times I might need to say it 7 times, but I just imagine, and I would say, John, how many times would you like me to say this for you today? And the message might be 7. And so I would say it for John 7 times that day. So then to go back, so you've paused, you've now asked the other person's soul, are you available to receive what I'm about to discuss with you? If you get a no, you revert back to the Ho'oponopono until the timing is right. If you get a yes, then all of a sudden you have this beautiful space. You have this space to engage with, and you'll notice a shift in energy. For those of you familiar with the idea of flow, you begin to live life in the flow because you're going the direction that the universe wants you to go. And when the timing's not right, you're listening and you're pulling back, and then you're pivoting to another direction. So the reason I call this soul talking, and I go a step above and beyond proactive confrontation, is that the more you practice this, you actually may begin to hear more than a simple yes or no. So let's imagine that I have John, who is my manager, and I say to John, from my heart to his, John, are you open to receive what I'm about to discuss with you about my promotion? And you hear back from John, yes. What I've noticed is the more I practice this and the more in tune I am by meditating and using prana and other breathing techniques, that I begin to hear other messages, and the person's soul will begin to talk to me directly. A great example of this that I share in the book is there was a gentleman who was in a personal development class with me. Let's call him Scott. And we were all standing around towards the end of this class, and I asked him, I said, do you want to do, actually at first I asked his soul, I said, do you want to do the next class in the program, the next class in the series? And I got a yes, but that he had a hesitation. So when I engaged with him, I actually brought it up from that perspective. I said, what are your thoughts? Tell me a little bit about what's going on, already knowing he was going to have reservations. Then, instead of just telling me yes and no, his soul said that the reason he would want to do the next level of the program is because it mattered to him for his sister, that he really wanted to do something in the world with mental health to support his sister. And so this is why I call it soul talking. We all have these superpowers within us. I am not a psychic. I am not an intuitive. I'm a normal human being and businesswoman who runs a company. And I share this with you because the more that you tune in, the more information you'll receive back. Now, to be clear, if you stop at pausing, if all you get out of what I've just shared is to remember to pause before you speak to somebody, you are already 100% ahead of the game of where a lot of us are as human beings. However, the more you choose to engage, the more you choose to reach your edge of what's comfortable for you, the greater your capacity will be to be in greater flow with the people around you and to receive greater and greater messages from other people's souls. And it really becomes a way to intimately connect to people in ways that are profound and loving and expand relationships into new possibilities. So the next thing I would like to share with you today is the tool of gratitude. It seems cliche. It was funny just today. Of course, this is something that's always happened for me. Whenever I am about to teach a topic, I always get confronted. I don't know if this has ever happened for any of you out there, but for me in particular, what has happened is that I will go to teach a topic And then I will face an obstacle or a challenge regarding that topic I'm about to teach to be sure that what I'm about to teach is authentic and that I'm not just putting smoke and mirrors up for people. So, as life would have it, I was just given the opportunity to connect to gratitude today. Two of my practices every day are the first thing I do when I get up is I write down 10 things that I'm grateful for. And I try to vary the list a little bit. Sometimes coffee is on there frequently. I do love a cup of coffee in the morning. And sometimes it's a completely brand new list every day, but I always try to add at least 3 to 5 new items to the list, if not 7 or 8. And sometimes it's a brand new list. So the reason I started doing this is there was a project called the 365 Grateful Project that was started by a woman who was a photographer, and she was going through a period of depression in her life. And a life coach suggested that she take one picture every day and post it on social media with a caption of something she was grateful for that day. And then from there, do that for one whole year. So she went and she did that, and I think the project is called 365 Grateful. And so I started off doing that probably about 10 years ago, as I got to about 400 days of posting pictures of things I was grateful for. Now, fast forward, the other practice that I do, so now I write down 10 things I'm grateful for every day, but even just writing down one is a huge victory, so be sure to acknowledge yourself for that. The other thing I do is right before I go to bed, I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. It's often one of my very last practices before I shut my eyes, because I always want to sandwich my day between what I'm grateful for in the morning and what I'm grateful for in the evening. So back to the challenge I mentioned earlier. It's kind of funny. The challenge I mentioned earlier ties perfectly into this. So I was going through an opportunity for growth. I had a loved one who had a COVID test, and it turns out this loved one had gotten COVID and showed up positive 3 times for COVID. And I was praying and I was meditating for this person, and I was really heartbroken when they got their most recent COVID test. So as I went through this experience, I started to notice that I was feeling a little bit sad and disappointed and worried and concerned. And then it dawned on me. One of the techniques that I love to do if I'm feeling sad, depressed, angry, frustrated, is of course give myself the space to feel that emotion. And then what I do is I write down a list of 100 things I'm grateful for, literally nonstop. I do not stop until I've hit 100. And just like today, when I started working on the list, when I noticed that I was getting frustrated and sad and disheartened, is that I got to 129 things. That's where I left my list today. So once you get to be in the flow of gratitude, then all of a sudden things begin to become easy and effortless and shift and transform. So it can be very, very powerful. If you want to create a gratitude practice for yourself, maybe start with one thing a day. And if you notice that you're personally getting frustrated, irritable, etc., add a gratitude thing to your list. You might just add one thing. So say you already have one thing listed for the day, push yourself to come up with a second thing that you could be grateful for that day, and so on and so forth. So every time that you notice you're getting frustrated or angry or sad, see if you could just maybe list one thing you're grateful for. You don't have to do it. It's just a fun practice that you could do. It's funny, that's another little aside that one of my teachers a long time ago taught me is do not should on yourself or others. In other words, don't tell yourself, oh, I should do the gratitude list thing Jen Hill said. Yeah, that would really be good for me. Or I should do the soul talking. I should really pause. Notice that there's no space in that. In fact, just yesterday, I was on the phone with one of my dearest teachers, Julian Adler, who was my business coach for 7 years before I sold my company. And what Jules was sharing with me is he has a recommendation that we remove a couple of words from our vocabulary. One of the words is try. I'm 100% with Julian on this. When we remove the word try and replace the word try with I intend, I am, I will, it can be such a powerful shift in the dynamic of energy. Another thing that he said to get rid of is he said, remove the word nice. When you say that something is nice, you're just using that as a placeholder for a way that you could describe the world in a different way, such as beautiful, delicious, incredible, magnificent. Think of how the energy of that shifts. And of course, another one of the words is should. What if we replace the word should with I will, I am, I would love to, I have the opportunity to? Notice that there's an entirely different vibrational element to that. So the last thing I'd love to leave you with today and to finish off today's talk with is the idea of inner child work. I am by no means an expert at it, nor am I the creator or a pioneer in it. Inner child work has been around for a very long time. So let me give you a quick 100,000-foot view of what inner child work is, and then we can talk about how you can do it. So inner child work involves imagining yourself at a younger age. It might be that you visualize yourself at 14 and you're 20 now, or maybe you visualize yourself at 3 or 4 years old. Now you can either imagine an image of yourself in your mind's eye, or I know some people like to carry with them or have a picture on their phone of themselves as a little child. And so what you can then begin to do once you have a picture or an image in your head, and you know the age that you want to talk to yourself at, and sometimes you can actually talk to your 7-year-old self one day and your 13-year-old self the next day. And there is no right or wrong way to do this. You have to follow your own heart's intuition. The way that I was instructed to do it is to put my right hand again on my heart. I just find there's a meditation my friend Mary Jo Lawai did for us for the Coalition for Global Unity. And she brought up a great point. She said, you know, when we put our right hand on our heart, we're feeling the warmth and the softness of our own touch. And, you know, with COVID, with not being able to be as connected to one another as we might normally be, even placing your own right hand on your heart has a certain warmth to it and a certain safeness. So imagine putting your right hand on your heart. And again, if you have the picture of yourself that maybe is a physical picture, you could hold it up in your left hand, or you could hold it up on your phone if you have a picture of yourself on your phone, or you could just imagine just shutting your eyes and going internally and visualizing yourself at whatever the age is that you want to speak to yourself. And then you get to ask yourself, what do you want to be called at that age? This is kind of silly, but I have one inner child who's about probably 4 or 5 years old, and she loves to be called sweetheart. So when I go and I imagine doing my inner child work with her, I'll say, hey, sweetheart. Hi, my love. How are you? So I might call her sweetheart or my love. Now, on the flip side, when I visualize my 13-year-old self, which was an endeavor in and of itself, if you have a blockage, you might find it's harder to connect with that version of yourself. I couldn't even remember or visualize what I looked like at 13 because I had such a huge blockage around my heart at that point. And so eventually I broke through it and I got to my 13-year-old self. Now imagine that you have this bitter 13-year-old who has been ignored. You know, I'm 39 years old now, for the last 26 years of her life. She wanted none of it. She did not want to talk to me. I would visualize myself as a 13-year-old and I would try to call her sweetheart, and she would be outright angry with me. She'd be like, I don't want to talk to you. You suck. That's my 13-year-old's favorite thing to tell me is you suck. You abandoned me. You know, you don't know what matters to me. You know, you can just imagine having this conversation with yourself at whatever age that you want to imagine yourself at. You know, and for guys out there, see what feels comfortable for you. Maybe you want to call your inner child buddy, or maybe you had a nickname as a child that you want to call that person. For me, with my 13-year-old self, she detests being called sweetheart or love. And she prefers Jenny, which was my nickname, Jeni, when I was in my teens. And so I'll often address her as Jenny. And, you know, you just get permission. You ask yourself, hey, how are you doing today? You can do it with your eyes shut or open, if you're looking at a picture. And you just want to say, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? What's going on? And I've also noticed that I have to shift not have to, I have the opportunity to shift my language depending on which version of my inner self, my inner child that I'm talking to. When I'm talking to my youngest inner child, the one I often talk to who's 4 or 5, I'll just be, hey, sweetheart, how are you feeling today? What's going on? Do you want to tell me what's going on with you? And versus with my teenage self, she's a little bit more sassy. I'll say, hey, what's up? You got to kind of shift your language and speak in the language. Now, as you grow this, you can begin to ask yourself, what matters to me? What matters to you? You want to imagine that you're having this conversation with this version of yourself. You might want to ask some questions like, hey, how are you feeling today? Is there anything you need? Is there anything you want to be acknowledged for? What are you most proud of? And you just really want to honor and be with and give yourself the space to be in whatever space that person, that inner child is in. And I always like to say a lot of us as adults are out there and we're angry and we're fighting with our significant others and we, might be fighting with our colleagues or friends. And really, you want to know who's doing the fighting? Often it's like our 6 or 7 year old self, or sometimes our 2 or 3 year old self, having a tantrum because they didn't get their needs met in some way. And when we take the time, it doesn't take long. You could do it for as short as 1 minute, as long as you want, any day that you want to do it. It is so powerful. And in fact, I just realized there is an incredible tool. My dear friend Mark Golston, Dr. Mark Golston, is the top leader in the world and author on the book and on listening. And he joined us for the Coalition for Global Unity about 3 or 4 months ago. If you go to awaketvnetwork.live and click on the Coalition for Global Unity link at the top of the screen, I want to say Mark joined us. You'll see his link there back in August of this year. And he does a beautiful, profound healing. I think I cried during it. Inner child work, a great example of how to do that and how to walk yourself through that process. So you'll be able to find that, and it's totally free for you to check out and watch. And it's again, awaketvnetwork.live. Click on the Coalition for Global Unity link and then scroll back to the August episodes, and you'll be able to find the episode there with Dr. Mark Golston, and that's the inner child episode. Inner child work can be very emotional. It can be very intense. And so you want to give yourself the space to explore it. I know one of my friends, Wendy Caldwell, who taught me about inner child work, she said her little inner child, her little 7 or 8 year old girl, was so mad at her for, ignoring her and feeling neglected that she would almost visualize her hiding behind a tree and kind of peeking her head out. And she really had to get to know her inner child. And why this all matters is because when you learn to love yourself, when you learn to give yourself the things you need, to be intimately in touch with what you need and to get your own needs met, to be able to provide for yourself, it really creates this incredible space to take care of yourself and to not be needy from the people around you. Think of how many times maybe in your life where you might have been angry with a loved one, a boss, a colleague, a friend, because they didn't give you what you thought they should know you needed. What if you could give that to yourself? For me, just yesterday, it was funny, not funny. I went in for a COVID test myself. And I know that ever since I was a little girl, I have been terrified of needles, and in particular, more so than shots, getting my blood drawn. So I went in to go get my COVID test done, to get my blood drawn. And do you want to know what I forgot to do yesterday morning in my meditation practice? You guessed it, I forgot to check in with my inner child and to see if she needed anything to be supported with getting her blood drawn. You're talking to a woman who is literally hanging onto a pole when I was about 9 years old, like for dear life, as my mom tried to take me into the doctor's office to get a shot. So it's, I know that about myself, and I did not check in. And so even after I got my blood drawn, I still forgot to check in with my inner child. And I think it was this morning I finally checked in with my inner child. And I normally don't miss a day. I don't, whatever reason, I forgot yesterday. And my teenage self was pissed. It was almost like laughable. Imagine this surly 13-year-old teenage self who did not want to get her blood drawn and was pissed off at the world. When you start to visualize it and you start to even imagine the next time you see your loved one getting angry or upset, imagine seeing them as their 3-year-old self, their 7-year-old self, their 17-year-old self, and know that you're not dealing with the highest level of, that person, that your higher self is nowhere to be found. When we're angry, resentful, sad, whatever it is, most of the time, it's very rarely our adult self that is experiencing that. It's some tender part of ourselves that has been left unattended to, that needs that extra TLC, that needs that little bit of extra love and that extra bit of grace. And so the more we begin to explore this and take the time, the more we take the time to meditate, to pause and to connect to the still, quiet voice within ourselves, and to pause and to connect to the still, quiet voice and the souls of other people, as well as practicing gratitude, taking the time to do the inner child work. All of these other elements make inner child work so much easier. And in addition to Mark Golston, I would also highly recommend Elaine Zittner is wonderful. She's also someone who, is an incredible teacher, and she helped me to do some inner child work with my 19-year-old self. Whew, that was an interesting journey to get to explore that. So when we start to play with it, we have all these parts of ourselves, and they all make up the whole of who Jennifer K. Hill is, whoever you are. And the more we begin to honor and allow and accept all these aspects of ourselves to come together in the greater whole, and to not see ourselves as broken, to know that when we're angry, sad, happy, afraid, that these are all equal parts of us that are not good or bad, that they're just parts of us that make up the gestalt of who we all are, the greater whole of who we all are. That's where self-expression, self-acceptance really begins to grow. And I'll give everybody like a fun little takeaway. One of my other favorite things, again, you can find all of this in my book, 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times. I've done other videos on the topic if you Google search Jennifer K. Hill. But I'll leave you with another one of my favorite techniques that I talk about in the book to kind of close out your day. As I mentioned earlier in the gratitude practice, I love to make a list of the 3 things I'm grateful for right before I go to bed. And to tie it all back into the inner child work, one thing you could do before you go to bed as well is to make a list of how you could have lived today better. I don't mean this as a judgment. I want to be very clear. You do it from a place of awareness, from a place of higher consciousness and observation. And you look at your day and you go, hey, how could I have lived today better? Sometimes I'll rush when I get really hungry. I rush into eating and I'm not present with my food. So sometimes I'll write that down. Or sometimes, my inner child, the 13-year-old one, loves to dance. And sometimes I forget to dance. Or sometimes I don't give myself enough rest, or I don't do other things. It's all about just acknowledging, hey, if you could have had it all your way today, how would you have loved today to have gone? And then another question I love to ask myself is, would I be happy if today was my last day? If I never lived another day, would I be happy? Despite the fact that maybe I didn't do all the things I wanted to do, or maybe I could have done things differently, Would I still be happy if today was my last day? And did I do enough spiritual work? For some of you out there just watching this today might be the spiritual work that you needed. Some of you might have already spent time in prayer and meditation. You're the only one who knows the capacity that you have to make the difference that you want to make in your own spiritual life, and the capacity that you have to absorb spiritual tools and information. Some people might have the capacity for a half hour, others might have the capacity for 5 hours in a day. There is no right or wrong. And then the last thing I love to do, and you can incorporate the inner child work into this, is you want to say to yourself, what am I proud of myself for today? What did I do? What are the things that maybe nobody else will ever even know I did? Did I skip that second cup of coffee? Did I not finish the cheesecake that I really wanted to finish? Did I work on that report that I had been putting off? Did I spend 20 minutes in meditation when I felt like I didn't have time because of kids or other obligations? You are the only one who knows. What are you proud of? And something you can do that can be deeply healing at an inner child level or at a soul level, whatever resonates with you, is to put your right hand on your heart. And once you've come up with this list of the things that you're most proud of yourself for, then what you could do is you might want to say, Jennifer Cahill, I am so proud of you that you spent 3 hours today doing spiritual study. Jennifer Cahill, I am so proud of you. Or if you're doing your inner child work, you could say sweetheart or my love or whatever you prefer, buddy, whatever you want to call yourself. I am so proud of you for taking the time to be grateful today. It moves me even just talking about it, because when we honor ourselves, when we acknowledge ourselves, when we ask ourselves and others, I learned this recently from a teacher, Shelley Palmer, what am I most proud of? Or you ask another person, what are you most proud of? This is where we can begin to expand our capacity to love ourselves. One of the last things I would love to leave you with today is from one of my other teachers and mentors, Arthur Samuel Joseph, founder and creator of Vocal Awareness. He and I recently collaborated on a program together called Vocal Empowerment Through Voice, 7 Steps to Vocal Mastery, which will be available online soon for purchase. And one of the things that Arthur taught me that helped me to become the woman I am today is to tell yourself every day in the mirror, I love you. I love you. You are an extraordinary woman. You are an extraordinary man doing extraordinary things. And with that, I leave you today. It has been a privilege and an honor to get to join you here today on the Pyramid Meditation channel. Huge gratitude to Patriji, to all of the team over at the Pyramid Spiritual Societies movement. I invite you to check out the incredible meditations that Pari and Patriji and all of the other meditation practitioners have facilitated on the Coalition for Global Unity. If you Google that, it will pull up. Again, that's Coalition for Global Unity. And feel free to tune in. Join us on Mondays at noon Pacific time, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we're doing these free global meditations every week, just like we're joining together today to be together in coherence. Thank you so much. Satnam, best wishes for everybody. And if you're out there celebrating, happy holidays, wherever and whenever you might be celebrating.